Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. This podcast is an extension of the Wanderlust and Lipstick brand and website that encourages women to be bold in all that they do. While I and the website have always been about travel, what I've come to realize is that we all have the ability to become better versions of ourselves. But in order to do that, we need to continually work on multiple aspects of our lives. Really, what I'm talking about here is reducing this down to a handful of things: diet, health, exercise, spirituality, giving back, and of course, adventure. And that's actually where travel comes in. Being bold means taking care of yourself on all of these levels so that when you want to tackle those truly bold moments, you have the capacity to do so. So the goal here is to present conversations with women who have inspirational stories to share. These are women who have excelled in their fields, they've overcome adversity, they've taken chances when the odds were against them, they've pushed themselves to their limit, and they've climbed mountains, both literally and figuratively. These are women who epitomize being bold. Now, why a podcast focused on women, you might ask? Well, I've become a bit hooked on podcasts myself, and I find a lot of inspiration and practical advice in the ones that I listen to. Not to take anything away from the men who I hear interviewed, but for a while now, I've had this nagging sense and frustration that women are being left out of the conversation. We are being underrepresented. At first, I thought it was just because women weren't doing as many cool things as men, so perhaps it was just more difficult for the hosts to find female guests. And then I realized that that was just bullshit, and that there are women doing amazing things in the world, but for some reason, they just aren't getting the same recognition. Now, this isn't a feminist rant, and I'm not here to say poor me or poor us. I'm here to turn the tides and focus on how many freaking awesome females are out there who are pushing themselves. What I've learned over the years, not only through my travels, but also through working out, getting myself physically in shape, is that when you hear stories from other people, it makes what you want to do seem possible, even if that thing was previously not even on your radar. Let's say I wanted to kayak solo down some river in Oregon. I might have some trepidation about that. But if I heard the story of another woman doing it, it would suddenly seem possible and not so intimidating. Well, just think of Cheryl Strayed and all the women she's inspired to hike the Pacific Crest Trail on their own. I want this Be Bold podcast to help plant those seeds of ideas and encouragement. I'm definitely eager to hear the stories and connect with these women myself, but I'm even more eager to share them with you through the podcast. I believe that through inspiration comes aspiration. And with that, I don't want you to just feel good after a podcast. I want you to take action. My goal is that after hearing these stories, you'll have a new perspective on what's possible in your own life. I believe that it's never too late to make change, to shift directions, or to find a new path. And that's exactly where my story comes in. Now, I've done some adventurous things in my life. I backpacked solo through Asia and Australia for a year. I drove my Jeep Wrangler from New Jersey to Alaska on my own. And I rode my BMW 650 motorcycle solo from Seattle to Panama. Even after all that, I still find that I sometimes talk myself out of pursuing something because I think that whatever it is, it's for someone else to do. Here's a perfect example. For years, I had known about the Snowman Trek in Bhutan. This is a 25-day hike through the Himalayas. Now, you're staying in a tent for 24 nights. There are more than 10 passes, over 16,000 feet, and there's one at 18,000 feet. I had known about the Snowman Trek for years, but I had always told myself, this is not something that I could do. This was for serious trekkers. It's for people who are really fit. And then one day, a switch flipped and I asked myself, what if I could do that? What would that look like? How could I make that happen? I was so bold as to actually offer it as a tour and lead a group. So putting it out there as a tour, I knew that I really had to get my act together and start training for it. I worked out doing P90X for a year and a half, and that was religiously 6 days a week. And I also did some big high altitude hikes in preparation for it. And that was in Denver, Santa Fe, and on the Big Island of Hawaii. The short story is that I made it. I completed the trek. And yes, I was slow at altitude, but I completed it. And I really, really loved it. So much so that I went back 2 years later and did it again. But after that first successful trip, I knew that I needed another challenge. And when I thought about other things I had told myself I couldn't do, what came up was running a marathon. Actually, running anything more than 3 miles because I did not like running. So after the snowman trek, I changed my thinking around running and I started training for the Honolulu Marathon. And instead of telling myself I can't run a marathon, I asked myself, how can I run a marathon? I loaded up an iPod with some running music. I'm a super big music fan, so that helped. I got some good running shoes. I got a GPS watch and some running clothes, and I was literally off. Now, I am the kind of person, for whatever reason, that I don't have any motivational issues in terms of exercise. I'm very self-motivated. But I did get a running coach, and she gave me a plan of action to get ready for the marathon. And understanding that process was super helpful. I ran my first marathon, the Honolulu, a couple of weeks after I turned 50. I ran the Tokyo Marathon a couple of months later. I ran another one in Portland, Oregon, 5 months after that. And then I ran 2 back-to-back marathons over Thanksgiving weekend. Actually, I ran an ultra. It was 31 miles on Saturday, and I ran the Seattle Marathon on Sunday. So if you missed the math there, I ran 5 marathons in a year's time. I would have never thought that that was something that I could do. So after that, I became even more convinced that it's never too late to try anything, and really that the only thing that's stopping us is our own mind, our own self-doubt. I have certainly learned to never say never. We are so much more capable than what we give ourselves credit for. I hope at some level that this podcast will help crack open a door to possibilities that you never knew were there, that something you hear will spark an idea or it'll help water a seed that's been lying dormant. Really, ultimately, I want you to find your own way to being bold, whatever that means to you. You can find out more about me by visiting Wanderlust and Lipstick, as well as Wander Tours, where you'll see all the tours that I lead around the world. And I encourage you to also check out the Wander World Foundation, the nonprofit I founded to help women and children in developing countries. I'll put links to all those sites in the show notes, and you can find those on wanderlustandlipstick.com. If you like what you hear, please tell a friend and write a review on iTunes. Both of those things help the podcast get more exposure. Thanks in advance for posting on social media to help get the word out. And if you know of any high-performing, adventurous, philanthropic women whom you think might be a good guest, shoot me a note or leave a comment for me. Finally, the ladies can join us on our Be Bold Facebook group. That's where you'll find our community. It's where we share goals and we talk about our setbacks and where you can find words of encouragement and inspiration from others. Until next time, be bold.